Aha.
That's why. You can tell us a lot more about it in a minute, but for the sake of the title, I just need ballpark topic that we talk about. All right. Sorry for the coughing. Been pretty sick over the weekend. But good to see you all. Welcome back to Neuroccino on this Monday morning. And today we have Lena, who just joined us last week for an internship in the lab and already voluntold to present. Well done, Eduardo. So I'm super excited. She has a nice kitchen, yes. Her chat
My
is already
kitchen?
ready.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Very, very
Don't
beautiful.
take the chat too literal all the time. There's a lot of conversations happening.
Nice.
Right, Lena, if you could share the link to the paper in the chat with everyone.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then
Let me grab it from the Neuroccino.
you're also co-host, so you should be able to
Oh yeah.
share the screen.
Okay, so this is
It is a
the
full house today.
paper.
Nice to see you all. Right, got the link.
Okay, let's see,
Perfect.
share. Okay. Do you all see my screen now?
Yes, if you know,
Yes.
well, if you need the pagination on the left, you can keep it. Otherwise, if you could go full screen, that'd be great.
How do I go to full screen in this? I don't actually need this. Like this.
Fine. You can just, yeah, perfect.
Like this.
Thank you. Take it away.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm excited to be hosting my first Neuroccino today. So the paper I have picked out for today is one on aphasia. So we're looking at naming and connected speech in post-stroke aphasia, and we're looking particularly at the white matter characteristics. It was a paper, I think, through about 3 weeks ago. Yeah, so the 20th of January. So very, very recent by a lab in Quebec. And it basically looked at, I want to go a little bit to the bottom here. Because it basically looked at these white matter characteristics I will be discussing later, but how these in the acute phase of aphasia could be a predictor for language performances in the subacute and chronic phase, so later, which I thought was very interesting. And they particularly looked at the naming and connected speech measures. And oh, someone in the, I can allow them as well. I don't know if I should.
We
Um,
take care of letting people in. You just present.
yeah, okay, sure. So connected speech, they defined as kind of a set of utterances aimed at conveying a message among interlocutors, which I interpreted just as having a conversation. And I think picture naming is quite well defined. So they looked at all these kind of white matter characteristics. So they looked at lesion-related, lesion load, and then micro and microstructural volume characteristics of these all these white matter tracts that are known to be involved in language. So the AF, the ILF, the IFOF, UF, and the FAT. And they measured those in the acute phase to see whether they would be a predictor of subacute and chronic language performances. Um, and the second thing that they did was they also tried to look at the contribution and the association between the hemispheres. So the contribution, especially of the right hemisphere, with this as well. And I'll get back to that a little bit later. And they also tried to highlight differences and similarities between picture naming and CIUs. Those were correct information units that were used for the connected speech measurements. So they had 28 participants, all people with aphasia that had a left hemisphere lesion. And they measured them longitudinally, so in the acute, the subacute, and the chronic phase. So the acute phase was within the first 3 days, and then subacute is a little bit later, but in the second week. And then chronic was at least 6 months post-stroke. So it's all relatively short term still, like it's within 6 months all. But that was what they were looking at. And they had these measures of picture naming and the CIUs, which I told you about just now. For the picture naming was the DO80, and the CIUs I use for the connected speech, so the conversational language. Then let's see. They had the MRIs. And for the white matter, they had these micro organizational units. I think the most like they did FA. Let's see. Yeah, AD, so actual diffusivity, radial, medial, and the volume itself, and then the lesion load as well. And I'll get to how we're computing the lesion load. Where is that? Oh, it's here. Okay, so yeah, so they're also looking at lesion load instead of only volume. I had not heard of this term before, maybe you all had. But so it would just be the volume of the lesion and the tract divided by the tract volume. So it's kind of a percentage of the tract that is lesioned. And they looked at these white matter tracts. Yeah, okay. And then they performed the Pearson correlations, and they also tried to do a regression analysis to see whether acute phase would predict the subacute and chronic phases of language performance. And then the results, they had a nice little, oh, this is a little bit big now, but these were all the tracks they were looking at. It was kind of a reconstruction. I think it's just a pretty picture to make it a little bit more accessible. They are pretty. And then now we have the lesions that the participants had here. So as you can see, all in the left hemisphere, or mostly, here is a little bit on the right, but mostly in the left hemisphere. Yeah, okay. And these are also some descriptives, but the one I want to look at is a little bit further. Yeah. Okay, so these were kind of the results. And what they did here is they divided them up in subacute naming, subacute connected speech, and then the same for chronic. And then these are the most correlated variables. So here we're looking at the DO80, which is was the measure for picture naming. And we see that especially in the FAT track, the lesion load was very correlated with this score. And so this is the acute measure of FAT lesion load, which would be connected or correlated with the subacute measure for naming, picture naming, which was really interesting because this is a week later. And then for this one, it's the IFOF. So that's the subacute connected speech, so the conversational speech, which they also found the kind of the same pattern, but for a different track and a different measure, of course. And for chronic naming, they also saw the same pattern for the FAT, the AF, and the ILF. And see for chronic connected speech. Oh yeah, this was also something that stood out to me. Here they also see the right UF volume having an effect or a correlation with chronic CIUs per minute. So that would mean that the connected speech in the chronic phase was correlated with the right UF volume measured at the acute phase, which is cool, so to say. Okay. yeah, so these were the results. And then, of course, there's a beautiful discussion that follows. Let me look up. Okay, so they kind of confirmed their main hypothesis that these acute measures of white matter characteristics could be indicative for subacute and chronic language measures. And also that the right hemisphere could potentially be a part here, so or play a part here. And the discussion that they had here was that it potentially would be that the right hemisphere tracts, that volume could be indicative of the prognosis of, or like the development of aphasia over time, because this language brain organization individually differs. So if you have a really lateralized language organization to the left and you get a lesion there, then of course your language scores are going to be, yeah, that's good. What worse than someone who has a more bilaterally organized brain for language, which was really interesting to think about. So kind of what they were talking about here is that these premorbid individual differences in brain organization could influence this deficit of language after the stroke. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe we'll talk about it in a bit. And I thought that was kind of one of the most coolest things about this paper. Okay, yeah, and then of course they all had these different tracts, especially within lesion load for specific tracts that could be indicative of the kind of the short-term prognosis of people with aphasia and the language performance in the longer term, which is a really cool thing. Oh yeah, and there's also somewhere, let's see if I can try to find it. They had this difference between the tracts as connected to, oh, I can't find it. But what they also said was that the IFOF may be more important for connected speech, and that the FAT and the AF and the ILF may be more important for chronic naming or for naming, which I don't think has been really well characterized yet. So that was cool. So the main conclusion basically was that these white matter characteristics or white matter tracts could hold well, predictive power for the long-term prognosis, or no, the short-term prognosis of aphasia. And especially lesion load could be indicative or predictive of the continuation of aphasia and language problems. Okay, so I think that's the main conclusion. Oh yeah, here they say it. So AF and ILF and FAT lesion load may be more associated with naming, and IFOF more with connected speech measures, but also naming. Oh yeah, that was true. Okay. Okay, so I think that's the whole paper.
Great.
Do you have
Thank you so
any?
much.
Oh, okay.
You have questions are flying. Chris was first, I think.
Hi, thank you for presenting. Just wondering the thing of the lesion load. Um, so they just take the proportion of tracts from an atlas?
No. What they do, wait, let me look back. They do is, oh, it's all the way good. So they look at the lesion volume and they kind of look at what part of that.
But the tracts that they look at, they are defined in an atlas.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, but the lesion
but
load. Huh?
I don't really understand because I mean we've been doing that for 10 years now, the Atlas thing. So they are, I mean, even Maxime Descoteaux's team, they have much more advanced methods to quantify the damage to white matter. So
Mm.
it seems a little bit outdated to use that kind because the problem of the volume overlap is that the tracts also they don't seem to have regressed out the total volume because you have the volume of the lesion that can impact. So if you have a larger lesion, you have pretty much automatically more damage. Um, but also the tracts have different volumes. So if you just take the proportion of damage in a tract, you can't actually compare that proportion to other tracts because different tracts have different volumes. So that proportion is meaningless between tracts and between patients.
But isn't it the case that if you take the percentage of the tract that is so never mind.
Because
So that
also the proportion of the tract that is damaged doesn't tell you if the section is damaged. You could have a whole, but you could have like 50% of a tract that is damaged, but still have preserved connection from one side of the connection to the other. If it was like just one half in the like a section of so just if you take a cylinder and you cut a diameter and you take one half out, you can still go through the cylinder. But if you cut a circle, the section of the cylinder, it's completely cut like a cable. So if you you can't tell that with their proportion measure,
uh-huh.
unless I misunderstood what they do. But
Well, I think it's pretty explained
yeah, that
here.
seems pretty
Yeah, it seems
simple.
to, yes, it's simple equation. I really hadn't really thought about that, to be honest.
But to be fair, Chris has developed one of the first softwares that did that. And that was, I think about, was it 2015?
Yeah, that was about that.
Something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
published in it.
It was before I did the PhD. Michel gave me that. Well, Michel
Yeah,
developed
it was
the
the first
tool.
ever toolbox that came out. So he's been thinking about this a lot, and he has also improved the software accordingly over time. That's why he has all these critique points ready to go.
Yeah. That's why it's a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit focused.
yeah, of course, yeah. It's a good note. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about this that much, to be honest. Because this is kind of new to me as well. But yeah,
Yeah, no, but it's
uh,
more like they don't discuss. Do they discuss any of these limitations?
no, yeah. Well, they have they kind of skipped over it a bit, to be honest. I'm too far off now. They do have these methodological considerations, but I don't think I have looked through it. I don't think they mention the lesion load, especially a lot here. No. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
strong. Good
that
point.
sounds that is weird that it's not even mentioned in the limitations. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean. So that was my uh
main critique.
criticism of
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, if that was, yeah, Chris logged off with video, so I'm guessing it's Lilith's turn next.
Hi, Lina. Thank you for
Hi.
presenting this paper. I have a couple of mini questions just to clarify. So they had 28 patients, but then if you go to methodological considerations, like it was down.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm. More. I think there was something about, yeah, like here it says connected speech predictive model was based on 13 participants.
Oh.
Why? This is
Connected
first thing.
predictive models based on 30 years.
This could, so I haven't read the paper yet, but this is not unusual for an acute to chronic study. You just always have dropout rates as you go along, and not every patient has all the measurements available.
So, meaning that they have only like 28 for the acute stage, but not for the. Okay. Then the question, and as I understand, their arcuate was just one full bundle without segments like anterior, posterior, and so
Yeah,
it
as I
was just a
understand it.
full arcuate that they measured. And another thing is about FA. So did they discuss the possibility that maybe the fact that you get a lesion in the left hemisphere, maybe maybe some fibers are degenerating kind of, and so there is no crossing fibers and the FA goes up.
I don't think they especially mentioned that. I have looked through the methodological considerations, but
So no, they didn't discuss
no,
that
not
part.
really.
Yeah. And they performed correlation analysis, or you said they also use linear model to predict?
They first did the Pearson correlation tests, just between I think all those values within subject, and then they after that, this was a part I was confused about a little bit as well. Wait, let me do it a little bit more. Where was it? It's a little bit
I saw, I think
different.
it says stepwise or something. Yeah, here, stepwise forward.
I think
linear.
somewhere it says they took the most correlated measures of the Pearson to make a regress model, and then that was something I was a little bit like, isn't that a little bit backwards? That you take your most correlated measures and then put those into a model, or
yeah, I guess. I think they used stepwise, and I don't know if
three most correlated measures with each dependent variable were entered as independent variables into a forward stepwise regression analysis.
Yeah, I don't know what was their criteria, but yeah, I don't know. I need to read better.
So yeah, so this was also a little bit my confusion, because they use these Pearson correlations to kind of figure it out first, and then they enter those into a stepwise regression analysis to predict them.
And another question, if I have time, just I have quick. So the patients, did they go through some recovery procedures in time, and are they also looking some improvements for some patients in like behavioral scores?
I think that was not well, they had like all these clinical measures and demographics as well, but it was not the focus of this paper. I think this was part of of course, a larger study. So that was not mentioned a lot here. But I think this lab has a lot of papers within this
data set. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Of course, you're welcome.
Eduardo, Müge, and then there's a question in the chat still.
Yeah, maybe a quick one, and congrats, Lynn, on your first Neuroccino.
Thank you.
But the question I had, I don't know, maybe it also relates to what Steph wrote in the chat about the number of like patients they had followed. Because I think I read somewhere at the beginning of the discussion, they say that most of their measures are predictive, mostly of the like from the acute to the subacute phase.
Yes.
So I wonder, at this point, maybe is it due to the like shrinking of the sample they have available, or because usually in clinics we're interested on relatively long-term outcome prediction. So is it maybe due to, I don't know, the resolution of some physiological mechanism, tissue edema, whatever, rather than actual underlying language abilities or...
So you're wondering why they're mostly focused on a subacute? So
Well,
acute
I'm
to
wondering
subacute, or-
why most of the prediction is from the acute to the subacute phase.
I think that's just that came out of this model. I don't think it was part of the. Well, they were mostly interested in this short-term prognosis. So that's why I think maybe this study might be just still be going on because it's such a recent paper. But I think that's just what constituted the highest correlations between the acute and the subacute.
Yeah, okay.
Because
No, I was
kind
just
of-
wondering whether they discussed or mentioned something about it.
No, not really.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay, I think Muge has also a question.
Yeah. Hi, thank you, Lena.
Hi.
This is interesting paper. I was wondering, like, so at some point they mentioned that IFOF is associated with connected speech. So what is it about connected speech that they think IFOF is associated with? Is it about like, because with connected speech we have this, coordination and sequencing of utterances, but we also have syntactic and semantic like binding, structure building. So what is it about connected speech that they are, they think these different tracts are associated with? Do they tell?
A lot of, I feel like a lot of questions they're not actually mentioned in the paper.
Okay.
But they kind of don't separate or discuss the connected speech measure a lot. So they only say how they measure it with the CIUs. But it would be interesting to see whether the IFOF would be specifically for the semantic reason or for the specific part of maybe some part of connected speech would be. But they don't really mention.
Okay. Okay. So they
Let's see.
focus more on the like anatomical, part.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And they only discuss briefly how they measured the naming in the connected speech, but not really the underlying like semantic or the different aspects of it.
Related to that, can I jump in? Do they differentiate or comment on how their findings fit into the dorsal and ventral model of language, where the ventral is more semantics and it also is more phonological,
This is
more
more
dramatic?
phonological. Yeah. No. Let's see.
Okay.
I promise I have read this paper. But let's see. No, I don't recall,
Okay.
honestly, that they mention the dorsal. But isn't that a model that's also kind of already a little bit being picked apart, or is it not?
It's still the most prevailing model. It has
Okay.
limitations, and that differentiation anatomically is interesting. But it is the prevailing model, so not including it in the discussion is interesting, although it's more in the healthy brain than in aphasia. Sorry, Muge, do you still have questions? No. Okay. Then we have a question for you in the chat from Sampa, who had to log off early, but let's get him an answer so he can watch it later. The question was, do they differentiate between the types of aphasia and their prediction outcomes? Do they also take into account the rest of the neurological conditions the patients had?
The types of aphasia. Oh, let me look at the descriptives. See, oh yeah, here. So I feel like for the main analysis, they kind of don't, or at least the other conditions. So not really.
And they're
But
all multilinguals I'm seeing here, right?
yeah, yes.
Most
Also,
of-
they did differentiate between monolinguals and then duolinguals, and then also some people spoke like 5 languages. Yeah, here. So they did differentiate between those, but not like that was mentioned in the introduction that they had these kind of differences in the population. But with the further analysis and the correlation analysis and the regression analysis, this wasn't mentioned again. So I feel like they maybe
But that's a huge confounding factor, right?
yes, I would say
Especially
so.
given the low numbers.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned the data comes from Canada, so even if they're listed as monolingual French, they're very much exposed, I'm guessing, to English
To
as well.
English as well. Yeah, I would say so as well. But I feel like, yeah, there's two here that are listed as monolingual French, but yeah, that could be a huge confounding factor in this paper, for sure.
Okay. Irene still has a question.
Yeah, sorry, just looking at this, I just wanted to add that also they didn't control for like hemianopsia or like neglect or all the other visual attention deficits, which if they're taking mainly naming into consideration, I mean, that could be affecting a
Sure.
lot. So yeah, just to add this to this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's always good to have a speech and language pathologist in the group. Right. That's all the time we have today. Thanks so much for presenting, Lina. I know we threw you into the deep end here, but well done.
Okay.
Have an exciting
Thank you.
week in science. See you next week. Bye.